For centuries, the world believed Native Americans came from one place, Asia, across a frozen land bridge, a simple migration, a simple story. They were wrong. Because hidden inside ancient bones was a genetic mystery nobody expected, a mystery buried beneath ice, beneath deserts, beneath entire civilizations. Scientists believed they already knew the origins of Native Americans, then DNA testing began, and everything changed. Ancient skeletons started revealing impossible connections. Some tribes carried markers linked to Siberia, others carried genetic traces scientists couldn't explain at all. And one discovery inside a flooded cave would force researchers to question everything they believed. What they found shocked everyone. So who were the first Americans, really? And how did they reach a continent isolated by oceans and ice? The answer will change how you see human history forever. For most of modern history, the explanation sounded simple. Around 20,000 years ago, the Ice Age locked huge amounts of water inside glaciers. Sea levels dropped. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. A giant land bridge appeared between Siberia and Alaska. Humans crossed it. Generation after generation moved south. Eventually, they became the ancestors of every Native American tribe. That was the official story. It appeared in schools, museums, documentaries, case closed. But then something changed. The deeper scientists looked into Native American DNA. Less sense the story made, because the genetics weren't clean, they weren't simple. And they definitely weren't coming from just one migration. Some ancient remains looked Asian. Others looked completely different. Some skulls carried features researchers compared to Polynesians. Others resembled populations from Europe. At first, scientists assumed it was coincidence, bad measurements, old methods, but the anomalies kept appearing, again and again and again. No one expected what came next. The mystery truly began in the freezing north, Beringia. A lost world most people have never heard of. During the Ice Age, this land connected Asia and North America. But it wasn't just a bridge, it was enormous, a cold grassland stretching hundreds of miles, filled with mammoths, bison predators, and humans. For years, researchers imagined migrants simply walked across Beringia and continued south, quickly, directly, but DNA would later suggest something disturbing. They may have stayed there for thousands of years. Trapped between massive ice sheets, completely isolated from the rest of humanity. Imagine that world. No cities, no roads, only snowstorms and endless silence. Families surviving beside firelight while giant animals moved through the darkness. Children born in a land that no longer exists. A people slowly becoming genetically different from every other human population on Earth. This is where the story gets strange. Because Native American DNA began separating from Asian populations long before scientists expected. The split appeared ancient, much older than the migration theories suggested. And researchers couldn't explain why. Then archaeologists discovered footprints, very old footprints, far older than they should have been. Some sites in North America hinted humans may have arrived earlier than the official timeline allowed. 13,000 years ago was once considered the absolute beginning, the Clovis people. Hunters carrying distinctive stone spear points. For decades, scientists treated Clovis culture like the first Americans. Then older sites appeared, Monte Verde in Chile, White Sands in New Mexico. Ancient tools buried beneath impossible layers of soil. Every discovery created new questions. If humans were already deep inside the Americas earlier than expected, how did they get there? The ice-free corridor between glaciers may not even have existed yet. So what route did they use? The coastline? Boats? No one knew, and that question has never been fully answered. Then came the skeletons. The bones that changed everything. One of the most controversial discoveries emerged near the Columbia River in 1996, a nearly complete ancient skeleton around 9,000 years old. Scientists named him Kennewick Man. At first glance, researchers were stunned. The skull didn't resemble modern Native Americans. Some claimed it looked more European, others compared it to Polynesians. The media exploded. Who was this man, and why didn't he fit the accepted story? Native American tribes demanded reburial. Scientists demanded more research. The battle became national news. Because beneath the legal arguments was fear that human history was far more complicated than anyone imagined. Eventually, DNA testing solved part of the mystery. Kennewick Man was closely related to modern Native Americans after all. But the controversy revealed something important. Scientists had relied too heavily on physical appearance. DNA told a deeper story. A stranger story, and the deeper researchers looked, darker the mystery became. Ancient remains across the Americas revealed surprising diversity. These populations weren't identical. Some groups split apart thousands of years earlier. Others appeared connected to migrations nobody had predicted. One of the biggest shocks came from a child buried near Alaska, a 6-week-old infant girl. She died over 11,000 years ago. Scientists extracted her DNA carefully. What they found shocked everyone. She belonged to a population never seen before, Ancient Beringians. A completely unknown branch of humanity, not fully Asian, not fully Native American, something older, something separate. For thousands of years, this forgotten population lived in the north. Then they vanished, almost completely erased from history. But traces of them survived inside DNA, tiny fragments hiding in modern populations, like ghosts buried inside living people. And suddenly, the old migration story shattered, because there wasn't one migration anymore. There were multiple groups, multiple waves, different lineages, different destinies. No one expected what came next. DNA studies then uncovered links between Native Americans and an ancient Siberian boy buried near Lake Baikal. His remains were 24,000 years old. Researchers sequenced his genome carefully. The results stunned the scientific world. Part of Native American ancestry appeared connected to this ancient population. But there was a problem. This population carried genetic signals related to Western Eurasians, not East Asians. That meant Native American ancestry wasn't coming from one source. It was mixed. A blend created thousands of years before the migration into the Americas. This changed everything, because the first Americans were no longer simple descendants of one Asian group. Their origins stretched across ancient Eurasia itself, a human story far older than anyone imagined, and the contradictions kept growing. In Brazil, ancient skulls displayed unexpected facial structures. Some researchers proposed entirely different migrations. Others fiercely rejected the idea. The debates became vicious. Carers were destroyed. Accusations filled academic journals. Because this wasn't just science anymore, it was identity, history, politics, and ownership of the past. Who gets to tell the story of the first Americans? Scientists, governments, indigenous communities? The tension grew worse after new DNA studies emerged. One Amazonian population showed tiny genetic links to indigenous Australians and Pacific peoples. The signal was weak, but real. Researchers struggled to explain it. Did an ancient migration reach the Americas separately? Was it a forgotten branch of humanity, or something even stranger? No one knew. But the discovery terrified many researchers because, if confirmed, entire migration timeline would need rewriting again. And that was the real fear, not being wrong. But opening doors nobody could close again. Every new discovery created more uncertainty. A cave in Mexico revealed ancient human remains. Stone tools appeared in unexpected places. Genetic evidence suggested populations split and merged repeatedly over thousands of years. The first Americans were not one people. They were many different journeys, different histories, all colliding in a frozen world at the edge of existence. And still, one question remained unanswered. Why did these ancient populations disappear? Because some lineages survived, others vanished completely. Almost like entire human branches were swallowed by time itself. Then researchers made one final discovery, a hidden genetic signal buried deep inside modern Native American DNA. A signal connected to an unknown population scientists had never identified. No skeleton, no name, no history, only genetic echoes. Like footprints disappearing into snow, everything pointed toward one answer. One migration, one origin, one clean explanation. But there was one thing scientists hadn't accounted for, one forgotten population, one ancient crossing, one genetic signature hidden for thousands of years. And that discovery, for decades, scientists believed the mystery was nearly solved. A frozen bridge, one migration, one ancestral population. Sybil. But ancient DNA destroyed that certainty. Because hidden inside old bones were traces of people nobody expected to find, forgotten lineages, vanished populations, and migrations so ancient they almost disappeared from human memory itself. The deeper researchers looked, stranger the story became. Now the mystery was no longer about how Native Americans reached the Americas. The real mystery was this: who were they before they arrived? And what happened to the people history erased? The answers began emerging from laboratories filled with silence. Tiny bone fragments sat beneath bright white lights. Scientists wore gloves, masks, protective suits, because ancient DNA is fragile. One mistake could destroy thousands of years of history forever. Inside these labs, researchers drilled into ancient teeth and skulls carefully. Dust collected in sterile containers, then came sequencing billions of genetic letters reconstructed piece by piece, like rebuilding ghosts from fragments, and what they found shocked everyone. The first Americans were genetically unlike any modern population on Earth. Yes, they carried Asian ancestry, but that was only part of the story. Long before humans crossed into the Americas, their ancestors had already mixed with another population in Siberia, a population connected to ancient Western Eurasians. This explained the strange genetic signals researchers kept finding. Suddenly, Native American ancestry became far older and far more complex than anyone imagined. The ancestors of Native Americans weren't simply Asian. They were born from ancient human mixtures happening during the Ice Age itself, and this is where the story gets strange. Because scientists realized Beringia wasn't just a bridge anymore, it was an incubator, an isolated human world, a place where populations remained trapped for thousands of years. The Beringian standstill theory began gaining attention. According to this theory, ancient humans reached Beringia during the Ice Age. Then glaciers blocked movement south. For thousands of years, they survived there alone, cut off from Asia, cut off from North America, completely isolated. Inside that frozen isolation, their DNA slowly changed, generation after generation. A new population emerged, the ancestors of Native Americans. And when the glaciers finally opened, they exploded southward into two continents. No one expected what came next. Researchers studying ancient genomes noticed major splits within Native American populations themselves. Northern Native American lineages separated from southern groups extremely early, much earlier than expected. That meant the expansion through the Americas happened incredibly fast, almost unbelievably fast. Within only a few thousand years, humans reached the southern tip of South America. Think about that. Ice Age hunters crossed deserts, mountains, forests, frozen plains, entire continents, all without modern technology, without maps, without roads. Only memory, instinct, and survival. But DNA revealed something darker beneath the migration. Not every population survived. Some disappeared completely. One of the most haunting discoveries came from Spirit Cave in Nevada. Ancient human remains rested there for over 10,000 years. When DNA testing finally occurred, the results connected the individual to modern Native Americans. But before genetics solved the mystery, Many researchers believed the skeleton belonged to a completely different people. Again, appearance had misled science. Again, DNA rewrote history. And again, ancient humans proved far more diverse than expected. Then came the caves of Mexico, submerged chambers hidden beneath the Yucatan Peninsula, flooded after the Ice Age ended. Inside these underwater caves, divers discovered ancient skeletons, perfectly preserved in darkness. Some were over 13,000 years old. One young woman became especially important, Naya. Her skull displayed features scientists once considered incompatible with Native Americans. Long face, narrow structure, different appearance. Old theories suggested separate populations entirely. But DNA told another story. Naya was directly related to Native Americans. Her appearance simply reflected the diversity of early populations. And suddenly, one of the oldest arguments in American archaeology collapsed. Human appearance changes. DNA remembers deeper truths. But even DNA had limits, because some genetic signals refused to fit anywhere. Researchers discovered tiny traces linking certain Amazonian groups to populations connected with indigenous Australians and Papuans. The signal was small, but statistically real. Scientists called it Population Y, a ghost population. No bones, no artifacts, no confirmed migration route, only a genetic whisper surviving in living people. This discovery terrified the scientific community because it suggested ancient migrations far more complicated than anyone imagined. Could another population have reached the Americas separately? Possibly along the Pacific coastline, using primitive boats? Nobody knew, and that question has never been fully answered. Some researchers proposed coastal migrations happened long before inland routes opened. Small groups may have traveled beside the Pacific Ocean, fishing, hunting, moving south gradually over generations. If true, rising sea levels destroyed much of the evidence. Ancient campsites now rest underwater. Lost beneath the ocean forever, imagine entire chapters of human history drowned after the Ice Age. Entire migrations erased beneath waves. And maybe that is why the mystery remains incomplete, because the evidence itself disappeared. Then another terrifying realization emerged. The Clovis people were not the first Americans. For decades, Clovis culture dominated archaeology. Distinct spear points spread across North America. Researchers treated them as the beginning. But older sites destroyed that certainty. Monte Verde in Chile suggested humans reached South America earlier than expected. White Sands footprints pushed dates even further back. Ancient butchered animal bones hinted at human presence before Clovis entirely. Every new site created chaos because each discovery forced scientists to move the timeline backward again. How early did humans arrive? 20,000 years ago? 30,000? More? The answer kept changing, and with every change, migration's story became harder to explain. Some archaeologists resisted fiercely, others embraced the uncertainty. The debates became brutal, because rewriting human history means admitting generations of certainty were wrong. And science hates uncertainty, but DNA kept speaking. Ancient genomes across the Americas revealed repeated population splits, migrations, collapses, disappearances. The peopling of the Americas wasn't one journey. It was a chain reaction of human survival stretching across thousands of years. Then researchers zoomed deeper into the genomes themselves. Tiny mutations acted like timestamps. Each mutation tracked ancient separations between populations, like branches growing from a family tree, and one branch changed everything. A hidden lineage appeared before the main Native American split, an ancestral population scientists still cannot fully identify. Unhuman humans contributed DNA to the first Americans. But their own identity vanished. No known skeleton matches them perfectly. No confirmed archaeological site belongs to them. Only fragments survive inside living descendants, ghost ancestors. Invisible people buried inside human genetics, this is where the story gets unsettling, because history usually leaves traces: ruins, tools, bones, names. But some human populations vanished so completely, only DNA remembers they ever existed. And somewhere in the Ice Age past, entire peoples disappeared without explanation. Then came one of the biggest revelations of all. Researchers compared ancient Native American genomes with Siberian populations carefully. They discovered the separation between ancestral Native Americans and East Asians occurred around 25,000 years ago, during the harshest phase of the Ice Age. That meant Native American ancestry had been evolving independently for an astonishing amount of time, long before the pyramids, long before agriculture, long before civilization itself. An entire branch of humanity isolated in the north, waiting, surviving, changing until the glaciers opened, and when they finally moved south, they transformed two continents forever. This was the big reveal. The first Americans were not simply migrants crossing a bridge. They were survivors of an ancient lost world, a people forged in isolation during one of Earth's harshest climates. Their ancestry carried echoes of multiple Ice Age populations, some known, some still unidentified. Their migration happened in waves, their history fragmented across thousands of years. And many of their ancestors disappeared before recorded history even began. What they found shocked everyone, because the story was no longer simple migration, it was survival against extinction itself. And the implications reached far beyond archaeology. This changed how indigenous history was understood. For centuries, Native Americans were often portrayed as static populations, as if history simply began when Europeans arrived. But DNA revealed something entirely different: a deep human story stretching back tens of thousands of years. A story of adaptation, movement, isolation, survival, loss. Some indigenous communities welcomed genetic research cautiously, others distrusted it deeply. And for good reason. For generations, outsiders had controlled Native American history. Excavated graves, taken remains, ignored traditions. DNA research reopened old wounds. Who owns ancient ancestors? Scientists, museums, governments, or the descendants themselves? The debates continue even now, because these bones are not just scientific samples. They are human beings, ancestors, sacred histories, and beneath every laboratory discovery lies something deeply emotional: identity. Imagine learning your ancestors survived an Ice Age world almost nobody could endure. Imagine discovering your lineage carries traces of forgotten humans lost to history. Imagine realizing your people crossed entire continents before most civilizations even existed. This wasn't just migration, it was one of humanity's greatest survival stories. But there is still something haunting beneath it all. So many populations vanished, ancient Beringians disappeared, population Y remains unidentified, other genetic branches survive only as faint traces. Entire peoples were erased before history could remember them, and maybe that is the most unsettling part. Human history is incomplete. We like clean stories, simple beginnings, clear answers. But ancient DNA revealed something far more disturbing. The past is fragmented, broken, full of missing chapters, and some mysteries may never be solved. Somewhere beneath Arctic ice, beneath flooded coastlines, beneath caves still undiscovered, lie the remains of people we have never identified, people connected to every Native American alive today. The migrations ended, the Ice Age ended, the ancient world disappeared, but the DNA did not. And somewhere, right now, inside a cave, inside frozen ground, or buried beneath the ocean floor, last piece of the story is still waiting. We just haven't found it yet.